Hello and welcome to the Fresh Air Sci-Fi Show. I am Joe,
And I'm Dave.
and yeah, we're starting a little bit late tonight. As I mentioned at the beginning, although my mic was off, it's been great so far, Dave. Dave has started his next course, so he's doing his IT and computing, and what was it? Something else. It was an
No, that was a computer science degree.
computer science degree. That was the one. So we're starting a little bit later tonight. So over the next few months, we may have a bit of a change to our normal days and times and things like that, so that we can fit everything in. And again, I apologise for the stacks at the beginning. I completely forgot that Dave was doing this today, even though we'd even discussed it a couple of days ago. So in my head, I wasn't going to have a mix tonight because I was running late to have a mix. And I was sat here and I go, "Where are you, Dave?" And he's like, "I'm doing my tutorial, Joe." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So anyway, had a little mix. It was quite fun. Apart from the fact that the first track I put on, obviously, I hadn't set it up so it was coming through to the stream. There's so many things I need to do. I need to make myself a little checklist because there's so many little things that you need to do just to go live, to have it as complicated as we do. I mean, at the beginning, we had it really simple, didn't we, Dave? It was just, here's us in Discord. And we've changed things so it looks a little bit more interesting, and there's stuff going on in the background. The chat screen comes up. Also, if you didn't hear me over the music earlier, hello Leon and hello Opie. I don't know if anyone else popped into the chat room. I was more focused on the decks. And yes, Prazj, yeah, I do apologize. So something's happening at the moment on Twitch, that all of our streams are initially showing as Overwatch. Because I played Overwatch and did a test stream playing Overwatch, now all of our streams are showing as Overwatch, and that shouldn't be the default for it. It should just be the video blogger story thing. Anyway, do apologise anyone who tuned in expecting an Overwatch stream. I do them occasionally, but not very seriously, because I play games to have fun and chill out with other people, especially in the lockdown world. It's the closest I've got to a social, other than this, of course, which is great, having this sort of stream going on, having so many people interact in the chat and sending us DMs and all sorts like that. So Dave, tell me, how was your first tutorial?
It was pretty good, thanks. It was mostly just a tutor introducing herself and showing us how to use the system and all that kind of stuff.
Cool. Do you think it's going to be a course that's right for you?
Yeah, because
Yeah?
I could do with brushing up all my maths.
Excellent. Fair. Must say, excited for you to do that, just because I think that you're going to learn some things I can steal off of you for my...
That sounds familiar.
Isn't that what I do with all your coursework?
Yep, but that's what it's there for. There's no point in knowing something if you can't share it.
Yeah, definitely. And the same goes back. If it's SQL or VBA, I can probably help you out. Although they're probably expecting the Code Perfect version, which I will have found out runs 5 minutes slower than my version. Because I care more about efficiency than it being, "Oh, we got to use a CTE for this."
Well, this year it's mostly setting up a Linux operating system, learning to code in Python, and learning to control robots and
Very
that kind
nice.
of, create networks and that kind of thing.
Yeah, very nice. The Python is a great language to learn. It's so many apps are using it now, and more businesses are actually picking up Python developers as well. I know a lot of them that are like Microsoft partners will tend to go the C# sort of route, but the ones that aren't,
I've just missed all that.
you just missed all of that. Well,
You keep freezing.
Well, I seem to be streaming this end, but I do apologise for keeping on freezing. Am I freezing?
It's cold out.
Anyone out there? It's cold out. You say that. I've got the window open. I should have worn a vest again. I always get so hot when I have a mix, but I wasn't expecting to tonight. So yeah, if anyone out there can tell me if I am being freezy and jerky and it's not working properly, then that would be most appreciated. If not, we're just going to assume it's a problem Dave's end. And once you've done your degree, you'll know how to sort it. Are you frozen, Dave? No, so both Leon and OP have confirmed it's fine my end, so it's just you, Dave. Yay, it's not me this week. Last week we had the problem where it completely died my end. Apparently it's your end, Dave. You're back now.
Okay, I'm just going to quit out of Discord and come back.
Oh no, it's turning it off and on again.
Yeah, typical IT solution.
And it works in at least 70% of things.
Exactly. I'll just be 2 seconds.
What am I gonna do today, man? Oh, give a bite a cool. You guys have some great ideas.
It's alright, we'll be right back.
Hey, yo, Potter, what's up, man?
Yeah, man, what you saying, bro?
Yeah, how's it going, bro? How you feeling? Safe, me too, man, me too. I'm so bored out of my mind, though. We gotta hook up. Wait, what happened to you yesterday, man? I thought you were coming round.
I didn't do that for my shit, but you wanna know what I done yesterday? I'll rap that shit to you right now. You know what, open...
Hello, Dave, you're back. Sorry. Just an old Mario remix I made. Just
awesome.
Yeah, so, I wonder what that was all about then, Dave.
I don't know, because it was fine for the tutorial.
Yeah. Maybe we need to find a different method to Discord then. I don't know. It always seems to be about this time of night it starts going screwy.
Yeah.
But for there is one thing I can do to reduce cam input though. I can take off my droid cam and stop that. So tonight, Dave, we were going to continue on with the Meno.
Yep. Because we got to the third definition, didn't we?
We did. So, brief recap. The Meno is a dialogue between Socrates and Meno.
Enough.
Socrates is the guy that's always asking why. Tell me why. He's and Meno is a bit of a meanie. And by that I mean he's not necessarily mean, but he's very up himself, a little bit egotistical, very impressed with his own intelligence.
Spoiled child.
Yeah.
General laxist.
And he believes things by what he's been taught. He's basically learned things and can repeat things, but throughout the conversation we found that he doesn't necessarily have much of an understanding of what he's talking about. He is basically there sort of trying to... Okay, so what the actual conversation about is virtue, and Socrates is trying to get a definition of virtue. But the first definition, he basically describes gender roles. The second definition, what was that one, Dave?
Oh God, good question now. Sorry, my head's full of math.
Yeah, not the time to be debating. Trying to remember.
I think the second definition was about goods.
Yes, and the third one he was just giving examples, wasn't he, of virtues? I remember
the second one is just giving.
The second one's giving examples. The third one was talking about it.
Yeah, virtue is the capacity to rule over people, and it gets broken down into slaves have certain virtues and that kind of thing.
Mm.
So the third one is about the acquisition of goods.
Yes, and then that bit basically resulted in them having a discussion about, well, if it's just the acquisition of goods, stealing from a temple would be considered virtuous, but it's not, because you need to acquire your goods with things like justice and temperance and etc. So again, we had a failed definition of virtue, and you can see Meno getting more and more frustrated with this, and they start talking about shapes and things like color and asking for a definition of, what a shape is. And they get to a point where Socrates gives a really simplistic definition. and that Meno doesn't like at all. He's basically it's right, but it just doesn't sound clever enough. That's basically Meno's problem. Meno likes to sound clever. So Socrates basically gives him the same definition, but far more verbose.
Verbose.
Yeah, far more verbose. Basically cleverly worded, but it's almost like the difference between giving a simplistic definition and trying to provide a definition where you're trying to fill a word count for a dissertation.
Yeah.
That's basically the difference between the two. So Socrates does have a favoritism for simplistic and unitary definitions. Now, we did discuss not everything can necessarily have a unitary definition, and also there are some things that are hard to describe without giving examples. So especially if you don't have the scientific technology and knowledge to discuss things like wavelengths, describing what colour is really difficult without giving examples, especially as you don't know the other person's experience is the same as you. And then you throw in another thing into the mix where there are some people with extra cones in their eyes that see far more colours than the rest of us, and people missing a cone that see less. You get colourblind people and all sorts like that. So I think that's roughly where we had left it last week. So I think you need to get it up, Dave, and we'll get it on.
Oh, before I do, I just want to do some showing off.
Oh, yeah. Look at that. Master of Arts in Philosophy with distinction. Yeah. You like that.
Yeah, I do like that.
You don't.
No, I think Opie's got one.
Oh, don't you?
I think so.
I was having a chat with Opie, actually, thinking about some different things we could get on with him, whether we're doing a philosophy of science one, or I mentioned we spoke a little while ago about having a general chat, sort of just filling up our Discord with as many people as we can without it falling over, and just having a general conversation, maybe with a little bit of music in the background, although obviously I won't be able to play that through Discord with the way it currently works. But yeah, just to have a general chat and a natter and all sorts as a bit of a wind down, maybe an end of month wind down type thing.
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So
just chat about anything.
Yeah, exactly. Just keep it free, and talk to the people that we've been talking to via messages on social media. Some of them for years, and very rarely have we had a real conversation with any of these people. And as much as I like a text-based conversation, it'd be really interesting to get them in here. And also, I'm sure Opie will show us how much more brilliant at philosophy he is than me.
Probably better than me.
Oh, I don't know about that, Dave. You're pretty special.
I'm sorry.
No, do it. You got to. The rules.
I should probably share my screen, though, shouldn't I?
Yeah. So let me quickly switch to the BRB mode, which I think is this one. No, that one.
What am I gonna do today, man? Oh, give a bite a call. You always have some great ideas for what to do. Hey, yo, bud, what's up, man?
Yeah, man, what you say?
So here we are.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I probably should have set it all up earlier, but, I was busy showing off.
No, I think it's far more fun this way. I know they might not find it fun, but I've enjoyed the conversation and the banter. I think, yeah, I don't think we'd be doing this show if we didn't enjoy that sort of thing, because that's what half of it is, at least. So I have to assume the people that still watch us, more than once enjoy that sort of thing too.
It's better than it all being dry philosophical stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you wanted a tutorial, I'm sure you'd go to university or an open university, or sit there reading or watching actual tutorials. We're trying to add a bit of fun and a bit of spice and as we've said before, and we've said many times, if there is anyone that wants us to go deeper on any topic, we are happy to really go deep on something. It may end up being a multi-stream thing or something that we have to start really early on a Saturday morning and do for the entire day, because, some of these topics are really fucking deep. But at the end of the day, if anyone wants us to go over in anything in more detail, or re-explain something that you thought wasn't quite clear or anything like that, we're both more than happy to do that. We're here because we enjoy doing this sort of thing and having these conversations with you. But if you have any critique or additional requirements or anything like that, well, as I said, we're here for you as well. Dave and I can happily have these conversations without doing streams and enjoy it just the same. So if there is something you want to know or you want us to cover or anything like that, we will go into it.
And I'm even willing to read a bit more about it if I need to. So
yeah, I mean, if we've got enough time to plan for a stream, if you ask us a really deep question right now, sometimes the question might be, I need a bit more information. I need to learn a bit more on that. And, I think that's the way it should be. If, it's hard to hold all of the information in your mind. I mean, I've been a database programmer for, I don't know, at least 8 years, seriously, I think. And there are still times where there are simple commands that I haven't stored in my brain because I know how to Google for that term and go, yeah, no, that's the bit I need. And I think the same thing can be said. I've read some papers that when someone asks me a question, I know the exact part of the paper that bit of information is in, but I haven't stored it there. I go, it's something like, hang on, let me look it up. And there you go. Other things, obviously, we might be a bit more ignorant towards, but it gets us learning new things as well, and that's fantastic.
Exactly. Okay, better get on with the Plato. I'm sorry. Okay, so after Meno's last definition fails, Socrates asks him to come up with another one. Basically, I've given you a shape and a definition of color. You said you give me definition of virtue, so let's have at it. And he's asking again for a unified definition. And Meno answers with, virtue is, as the poet says, to enjoy fine things and to be capable of them.
Interesting.
So he's speaking mostly about like acquiring gold and beautiful artwork and being able to appreciate these kind of things.
It's another acquisition of goods type one, but with an added bit of to enjoy them. And he's talking about fine things as well. So he's not talking about enjoying kicking a ball about. He's talking about enjoying a game of chess or something like that, or a nice wine, or, as you say, a bit of art. And to be capable of them. So does that mean contextually the ability to get them or the ability to just drink? Because I mean, I can do that.
It's a bit of both, but it's like wine tasters will say, well, you drink wine, I appreciate it. It's sort of a difference between those two things in Meno's eyes.
Okay.
Virtue would be being the wine taster.
Right. Okay.
But Socrates kind of comes back at him with the argument that everybody desires. I mean, he makes a bit of a switch here because he goes from fine things to good things. Meno doesn't really question it. And you could say that there is sort of a difference between good things and fine things. But he generally goes with it. And Socrates argues that everybody desires good things. He asks Meno, do you think everyone desires good things? And Meno says no. Some people desire bad things. Which is, I mean, you could say that's true because some people desire to smoke. Smoking is bad. So therefore they desire a bad thing. But Socrates argues, I should probably scroll down, but Socrates argues that when it comes to, say, something like smoking, people don't desire the cancer or the bad lungs. What they desire is the nicotine, the feeling, the stress relief. So they desire the good parts of it.
Yeah, I suppose you could even go one further where there are incredibly expensive cigars that some people really enjoy smoking. So it's sort of taking, versus what I used to do with my little rollies to a really nice cigar. I mean, that would almost be a comparison to that. But again, both types of smoking are negative to your health. So we would generally regard them as a bad vice because they cause us and people around us harm.
Yeah, exactly. But you're not, or most people won't be desiring them for the fact that they cause other people harm.
No,
So,
it's the experience, as you say. I mean, like, for example, with a rollie, one of the things I used to find, I mean, when I was a chef, one of the things when you had that really busy kitchen and you've been rammed for like 3 hours straight and you sit down on the wall outside the kitchen and you rolled that cigarette, it was actually the act of sitting there and rolling it that was the very first part of calming down. And sometimes when I was stressed, I just used to sit there and roll them. Which is great.
Same.
Yeah, it was that was something. It was just getting your hands busy doing something, so you were just free to process. So again, there wasn't the desire there for the negative. It was actually taking the positive I could from this negative thing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what most people do. I mean, if you were to give somebody a glass of poison and they didn't know it was poison, you could say, well, they were stupid for drinking the poison. Why would anybody want to drink poison? But what they would have desired was, say, a liquid that was going to refresh them. They didn't know it was poison. They always desire the positive elements.
So if we were to put this into a very, someone who likes abusing other people, would we say that is in the same way they're searching for the pleasure from themselves? They're not necessarily searching for the harm that they're causing the other person, or is the harm that they're causing the other person the thing they are searching for in that instance?
That's quite a complicated question, because it would boil down to the individual's psychology.
Mm-hmm.
Because it might be that they desire the feeling of power that it gives them.
Power is often the common one.
Yeah, or they might, there are people that generally desire the screams of pain of others and enjoy that. So it's not, while they desire to cause harm, they desire to cause harm because of the good feeling they get from it.
Yeah, so even then, it's still searching something above. They're still searching for the positive in something that would be negative.
Exactly. I mean, again, that's a perspective in how you would look at it, because one person might say, well, he desires to harm people. But is that what the individual truly desires? Which, it makes it a complicated question. But I think Socrates is mostly right here. When most people desire something that has bad elements, it's not the bad elements that they're desiring.
Yeah. I'll go with that. Oh, I lost 10 credits. I've I found something in the restream thing. And if you put I think it's exclamation mark slots and the number of credits, as long as you're signed to our Twitch thing, you can use any credits. So basically anyone who watches us and things like that, they start accruing credits depending on how long they've been watching and things like that. It's something that's connected to Streamlabs. But if you put the slots thing in, I think it only comes from if you're using Twitch. But it puts in there that, you play a slot machine.
Cool.
Yeah. Sorry. And slots,
That's all right.
They're another thing that can be considered bad, but what you're looking for there is the rush from the win. You're not looking to waste your money. You're, again, looking to get that, yes, I just got 150 quid.
Yeah. You're chasing the next win rather than desiring a bunch of losses.
Exactly, yeah.
And that it's basically what Socrates says here. It is it isn't clear when people don't know that bad things are bad. They don't really desire those bad things. They desire what they think are good things, even if they are bad things.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, I'm scrolling on the share, and I'm thinking, why the hell isn't that scrolling down?
I did that a number of times when I was sharing my screen the other week.
Yep. It's easy to do. So he then argues, there are people who live miserable lives, but they don't desire to live miserable and bad lives. They desire good things. They desire to get out of that situation. And Meno agrees. It looks like you're right. Nobody wants bad things, unless you're a Trumpster.
Even then, though, don't they think that's good?
Exactly.
Everybody is always operating under the parameters of what they think good actually is, which, it's when we talk about a subjective good versus an objective good. There are things that are definitely good for us, regardless of whether we personally value them. And equally, there are some things we personally value that are really bad for us. So,
exactly.
That's going to go into a conversation about value, and I really shouldn't make a sidetrack anymore.
Yeah, we can do that at another point. Value is an interesting discussion anyway. So
yeah.
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say we've got a couple of articles on it, and we're doing the Fresh Air podcast. We're doing little bits on value as well. So yeah. Definitely save that conversation.
No worries. So Socrates then brings up Meno's third definition. You were just saying that virtue is to want good things and to be capable of getting them. Meno agrees, and Socrates says, well, that argument shows that the argument we just had shows that everyone wants good things. So if virtue is just wanting good things, no one can be more virtuous than anyone else. Which is true.
Mm-hmm.
If everybody desires good things, everybody is virtuous.
Yes, although he did have the caveat of the capable of them as well. So that would then mean that only the affluent, or the affluent are more virtuous than those in poverty, because they're more capable of getting the good things, which
they can actually get it.
Which again is an unfair assessment, in my opinion. Not being able to afford something shouldn't be a strike against your character.
That's basically what Socrates argues next.
Oh, look at me!
I know, doing very well.
You can call me Mediocrities.
That's my name. Oh no, I'm Kant.
Yeah. I've got to change our names. Mediocrities and cunt.
That would work. So Socrates says, well, we can scrap the first bit, which is wanting to desire good things, because everybody is virtuous under that definition. So what makes someone more virtuous is to be capable of getting good things. So in other words, he shows that when we go through a definition, we look at the bits that don't work or are too broad and just describe everybody. Because if it describes everybody, then it's not actually picking anything out.
Like we've had the conversations with the non-theist definition of atheism, where anything that is not a theist is an atheist, and then you end up with things like babies and rocks and zebras and turnips and theists in a coma and everything like that being regarded as an atheist, because that is why it's such a vague, wishy-washy definition. Quite funny that we've randomly got into that conversation again today as well.
Yeah.
Not intentionally, but it was the same. Babies are atheists. Everyone's born atheist. Everyone's born atheist. And you actually took him through that. It's in a similar way to Socrates does to Meno. You were having the discussion with him and having a discussion about his definition, and it was quite funny because every time Dave poked a hole in this guy's definition, he changed it. he tweaked it. He was changing it, but it was an ad hoc redefinition that was probably doing worse than Meno, to be fair.
He would contradict something he said earlier and say, well, this is a definition now. But then go back to the original definition and say, well, atheism is just simply a lack of belief in gods. With all these qualifications, of course, depending on the situation you're using it in.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. Anyway, sorry.
That's all right. So he says, then the only part of your definition that's doing any work is the being capable of getting good things.
Mm-hmm.
So he then goes on to show that this definition still doesn't quite hold and describe virtue, because he says, Meno says, getting hold of gold and silver and honor and power in the city is virtue.
Mm-hmm.
But he also argues then that, do you call somebody getting gold and silver virtuous? And do you call the act an act of virtue if they get them unjustly? Meno says no. That would be vice. So Socrates then sort of reaffirms the whole, well, virtue is an action done with certain specific qualities like justice or temperance or some other part of virtue.
Mm.
And Meno says, yes, how could virtue come about without justice? So in other words, he's just contradicted what he's already said.
Yeah.
And Meno and Socrates keep going through this. And Socrates gets him to see that an act is only a virtuous act when done with a part of virtue. And Socrates then says, well, I don't want you to break it up again. I want your unitary definition. And he says, everything that you've argued now comes to basically virtue means doing things with a part of virtue.
Mm.
And again, he says, well, I asked for an account of the whole of virtue, and you're telling me that virtue is performing an act with a part of virtue. But as Wittgenstein would say, sometimes something is a family resemblance.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, there is no unitary definition. So virtue could be performing an act with a part of virtue. In other words, with fragments of what we would consider to be virtuous character. Although I would add on the stipulation that it's done knowingly and thoughtfully, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, as we've spoken about with virtue, it's not just acting a certain way; it's understanding why you're acting that way, why it's virtuous to do that, what the different virtues are, and how to balance them, and it's very cognitively driven. Which is why it's hard. It's a lot harder to be virtuous than to be a consequentialist or a deontologist.
Yeah, I mean, deontology still incorporates that element of virtue ethics to some degree, but it's nothing like virtue ethics with regards to how much it is.
Mm.
So Meno then says, well, look, your answer has fallen flat again now. You haven't been able to give me a definition that's unitary, kind of like I just gave you shape. And Meno starts to get annoyed.
You and your boyfriend, Gorgias. Were they actually together, or is he being...
Oh, no, they were... I think they were... in the same way that most Greeks and Romans were.
Okay. No, I didn't know if it was you and your boyfriend, as in, like
Yeah,
a
no.
derogatory statement. I know that they were perfectly okay with things like homosexuality and stuff like that. Then it was a non-issue, and in some places, encouraged. But
Oh, don't get me wrong. Socrates is being slightly antagonistic and mean here,
yeah,
but he also was involved with Gorgias.
right, okay, cool. That makes sense. I mean, because Gorgias was his teacher as well, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I thought he was making a bit of a dig at him. So he was sort of making a dig at him, but it was also true.
Yeah, and he was doing it. If you think about somebody like Meno, who has a lot of power and he's born into the aristocracy, he can do a lot of damage to Socrates, who is generally a nobody, who he's a bum who wanders around asking people questions. So Socrates has to be very careful when he insults him. So he tells him the truth, but in a sort of sarcastic manner.
But I like him.
Yeah, Socrates is fantastic, or at least the way Plato has written him.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a bit of sensationalism. That sounded wrong in my mouth.
Yeah, but that sounds rude. But no, I know what you mean.
Yeah, good. Hopefully
Socrates
everyone
was,
out there does too.
yeah, no. Socrates was Plato's hero, so of course he's going to write him in the best light.
Yeah.
And also put his own words in his mouth.
Yeah, when he needs to.
Yeah. Okay, so Socrates has now led Meno to the point of being aporetic, which is to suffer from aporia is to find yourself completely lacking in any grasp for what you thought you knew. You become angry and sort of numb and annoyed and pissed off. Like how you feel about me sometimes when I'm going through the Socratic method with what you think.
Yeah, but I also understand what's going on, so I appreciate it. But it's true. I mean, I notice it with other people as well. When you start breaking apart these, especially if they're deeply held beliefs, people start getting really funny about things. And it's quite interesting to watch how the second you realize you don't know what you thought you knew, where you thought you had knowledge, and actually all you had was some information and you didn't fully understand the information, you just knew how to repeat that bit of information. It's a bit of a blow to your ego, your pride and stuff like that, and it can make you feel like, oh, fucking And I notice it, especially in online debate. It was like I was saying the other day, where when I do try and question people and get them to bring out their information and understanding, they're just like, just get to the point, just say your piece, get to the point. And it's like, no, I need to know what you know so we can have a discussion on a level. You might know more than me, you might know less than me. At this moment in time, you're not telling me anything. I've just asked a couple of questions and you're like flying off the handle. At least, Meno got through a couple of pages.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you can see that happen in the discussion today with the guy who atheism is just a lack of belief. Babies are atheists. Okay, but if it's just a lack of belief, then what about a dead theist? Are they atheist? And he said, no, he's a dead theist. He's not an atheist. Well, atheism can't be just a lack of belief in God. And then he lost the plot.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm having to redefine it because I didn't expect anybody to come at me with these kind of options.
Yeah.
It's what we do.
I didn't expect someone to mention something I didn't understand.
Yeah. And other people then started joining in. And weirdly, they were disagreeing with the original person, but blaming us and our arguments.
Yeah.
Like, well, it's ridiculous to say that rocks are atheists. It's ridiculous to say it in this way because then rocks are atheists. Babies are atheists.
Exactly.
Yeah, but that's what that
the
guy's
point.
saying.
The original post was him just saying 10 times, everyone is born an atheist.
Yep. But because we were questioning it, we were taken up against.
Yeah.
they were criticizing the OP, but through us.
Yeah.
But not criticizing the OP, which is, I find it kind of strange. They've come in already aphoretic.
Yeah.
And attack the person who's kind of put that state in there.
Yeah.
Rather than going, well, I disagree with your definition. I know you're atheist, but I think you've got a bad definition.
Well,
It's a strange...
Well, I qualified a couple of times. I think it was a guy called Dylan or something like that. So he kept on saying, well, that's just a ridiculous argument because that, as you said, that would mean babies are atheists. That's this. And so I was like, well, if you look at the OP, it was babies are atheists, and that's because atheism is a lack of belief. No, atheism is an absence of belief in gods. So we have been taking everyone through what that actually means, because that would mean, for example, someone in the coma with minimal brain activity who isn't currently holding beliefs is an atheist, even if they were a theist when they went in. But actually, in that state, they're in a coma, so you might be talking about them in different ways. In the same way that if it's just an absence of belief in gods, then, you know, rocks and rabbits and cheetahs and everything like that would be included in this definition of atheism. And, you know, that's a bit problematic. And we went through and we took everyone through why it was problematic. And as you say, people jumped on arguing against us because I don't know.
I don't know, yeah.
But then it's saying that there are a few people that did agree on that sort of thing as well. But yeah, the interesting thing was more and more people, I think, are realizing how stupid the rocks are atheists argument is. And when you throw in something there like a theist in a coma with no brain activity, so therefore isn't able to hold beliefs, and you compare that to a baby, they're like, right, maybe that does make sense then, okay. And then you go, right. And you start building it up. So it can't just be a lack of belief or an absence of belief. I mean, absence of belief is one of the ones that I find most ridiculous, because people, and someone even said this on there, which I have in my article about absence of belief, lack belief, and don't believe. They actually said, yeah, but when we say absence of belief, we don't actually mean absence of belief. We mean basically that we don't believe the thing that's been considered. And you go, right, okay, so a baby hasn't been able to consider the proposition. So for one, there you go. And two, okay, so atheism isn't an absence of belief. It's a lack of belief in something that's been, and a proposition that's been considered. So therefore, you can't include babies or anyone in that sort of thing. And the same way you can't include an agnostic, because they haven't fully analysed the proposition. They've just found it meaningless, so they haven't considered it. Or an apatheist, they don't care either way, so they haven't fully considered it. That's their answer. So they're different types of non-theists that have a lack of belief, but they haven't fully considered the proposition. And as soon as you consider someone that lacks belief because they've considered something, you are left with two positions where they fully considered it, and that's what's the agnostic position and the atheist position. Now, I know some people like to group those two together. I'm not getting into a debate about that one, but we've already shown that there are so many positions that are not covered by this definition that people keep changing and tweaking. And when you start poking and prodding at this, they're just they have to switch and change, and that's why it's a big problem. We've just had a comment from Leon saying, former Lactheus here, we just wanted to avoid taking the energy to justify our position, so it was easiest to say we lack belief, plus it's way too prominent of a definition. You're right, there is a lot of utility in the Lactheus definition, because on the internet that is how it is commonly understood. So there's utility in a definition like that. We've had Colossus on Twitter, I think. He says he understands that if he was having a philosophical conversation with someone, he would be described as an agnostic. But on the internet, talking with other atheists against theists, he calls himself an atheist because that's how everybody understands the term, and it's for the ease of conversation. Great. You've made your case for why you're using that definition. It makes sense. Fine, you're free to identify yourself how you like, really. But there you go. He's got a different thing. And what you mentioned about the lack belief position, it's funny as well, because people think that lack of belief definition does absolve them from any burden of proof. People don't take the time to understand what the burden of proof actually is. Dave's got a great article that summarizes a lot of the conversations that we've had about this, called More on Beliefs and Justifications. It was after my article where I was trying to explain it to everyone, and all the feedback that we got from people saying, you don't know what the burden of proof is, you're not real atheists, and you're clearly theist trolls and all that sort of thing. And it's very, very, very hilarious, but also frustrating, the way a lot of this gets treated. So the burden of proof on a positive claim is obviously to prove it true. It's very rigorous. It's like a knowledge claim. If something is knowledge, you're supposed to be able to demonstrate it as true. Caveats aside, but let's go with that for now, for simplicity. Whereas with a belief, you're just supposed to justify it as rational. And that includes lack of belief. Well, I don't believe that. Well, why? That is it. Explain your reasons why. And if your reasons are just, well, you haven't convinced me. Well, why haven't you convinced me? It's not convincing. Okay, that isn't really a strong argument to support why you don't believe someone. There are plenty of reasons to not be convinced. But also, if you are of that lactheist position where you don't believe gods do not exist, but you also don't believe gods exist, you've actually got to justify why you don't believe either position is true. Because when you're considering a proposition, something like existence, it is either true or false. So what you have to consider is, do you believe that it's true? Do you believe that it's false? Now, you can be in a belief state where you believe it's neither true nor false. This is commonly known as the psychological state of being agnostic towards the proposition. And when you're in that state, you almost have to justify why you're not convinced either way. In some respects, it could be harder to justify the agnostic position as a more rational position than either or, depending on how clever you are, obviously. But anyway. Sorry, Dave.
That's all right. Okay, so here is kind of Meno getting verbosely into the aporetic state.
Mm-hmm.
Socrates, even before I met you, I was warned that you yourself are a confused person, and that all you do to others is confuse them too. In other words, that comes from Socrates, well, I don't know what such and such is. Perhaps we can work it out together, as you seem to know. Yeah?
Yeah, which is fair enough.
And then he says, even now, I can feel you casting your spell on me, dosing me with weird potions, singing me queer incantations, till I find myself brimful with bewilderment. And that's basically what being aporetic is. You're bewildered. You're like, well, I thought I knew this, but I don't know it. What? I could have sworn I knew what this is, and you just made me think, and you get angry about it, or you just sit there going, what? And he calls Socrates a stingray. In other words, anyone who comes across a stingray is stung into numbness if they touch it, and you seem to have done something like that to me. As you know, I have that effect on people too, on occasion. So he gets angry, basically, and he says, it's a good thing you don't go elsewhere, Socrates, because you might be lynched for witchcraft because of the way you make people feel. And Socrates is, of course, you're a con man and you nearly conned me. And he basically says, Meno, you've done this just so that we can get into a slanging match.
Yeah.
You've insulted me just so that I'll insult you. Just for instance, I myself don't know what virtue is. But perhaps you knew. before you bumped into me. But by this stage, you might well have lost the knowledge.
Hmm.
So we've come to the conclusion that neither of us knows what virtue is. So why don't you help me inquire into the question, what is virtue?
Which is a nice way to do it. I mean, when we're talking about the conversations, the whole dialectic approach is to try and reach that truth between each other. And yes, sometimes you do know the answer, but you need to get the person with you along it. And I suppose in some respects, some people might refer to it as a manipulative technique. But I've found sometimes people need to come to their own conclusions. You can't just give them the information, because if you give them the information, they will either accept it and repeat it, but not fully understand it, or they'll reject it because it's not like this other piece of information that they know. Whereas when you sit there and you're building through the conversation and they suddenly have that, and it could be anything. It could be a work process where you know full well what they should do is, I don't know, go down to the server room and turn the server off and on again. But if you get them to realise that they should do that themselves, it will be in their head next time. Whereas if you just tell them what to do, every time this particular problem happens, they'll go, how do I deal with this? And it's the same sort of thing here. It's the same sort of thing with a dialectic conversation. You know, if you give people information, they will either reject it or accept it and repeat it. Whereas if you search for the truth together, even if you do know the truth yourself, you can come to that accord, and eventually you do both sort of learn something.
Exactly. And Socrates brings up something like this at the end of the Meno, in that we might not have knowledge of something, but we might have what could be considered a true belief. And the more we question it, and the more we dialogue about it, and the more we get into dialectical discussions with others who challenge our things, the closer it gets to knowledge.
Mm.
The more we understand our position, the more we can justify our position, and that kind of thing. And that's the whole point of something like this kind of dialogue.
That's almost a fallibilistic approach.
Roughly. Although Socrates was a justified true belief person.
I was going to say it was a fallibilistic approach to the JTP.
Yeah. I mean, what he basically argues is that something like Meno thought he had a justified true belief. He heard it from somebody who said something, so he believed it to be true, and his justification was so-and-so. But now that he's been questioned, he's come to the realization that he never held a true belief. He never held a justified belief, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So he stripped it down, and he's gone, well, look, all your definitions, they don't work. You haven't described virtue. So shall we have a discussion together?
Which is great. A great way to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And I know it's gone very easily in this dialogue, the Meno, but in reality, it doesn't really work, especially on somewhere like Twitter. Like, consider the conversation we were having today about atheism. The guy was brought to that point where we could have gone, well, you know what? Let's have a discussion together. Let's, work through your definition. But he was surrounded by other people banging their spears and going, no, go away, bad person. It is just a lack of belief in God. Go away. So you can get them to the aphoretic feeling, but you can't get into the dialogue because people circle the wagons.
Yeah, you need to get it to a point where it's a one-on-one conversation, or even a two-on-two conversation where you're all in that same sort of frame of mind where you're willing to explore the truth. And it's very hard. I mean, it can be hard as well if everybody had been there supporting us against one person. They would have felt completely bewildered in the conversation and lost because there's too many people dogpiling on them, and they'd have dug their heels in, got defensive, and run away until the conversation died, and then just carried on with their same misinterpretation. how often do we guys get into this discussion about the topic? I try. I did for a while get into it quite a lot. I try and generally avoid them past giving a link to someone these days, because when people talk about the Lactheus definition, it's a pointless conversation for me to get into with them. I give them the definitional problems with lacking belief link, and if they come back to me and ask questions, and I'll get into the conversation with them. But when something does pop up into my feed where everyone's born atheist, or atheism is only a lack of belief, I do find that I am compelled to get engaged with that conversation, because it's just one of those things that irks me. If someone was to say, like I was given the example of that Colossus guy who gave me a very rational reason as to why he uses the Lactheus definition on the internet, I'm like, yeah, cool. I can't really argue with that. That's a very valid reason for using it on the internet. It's got utility. It's the people that are more dogmatic about it and just, no, it's this because it's this, and then they don't even understand what they're saying. I get riled up a bit, but I have been getting better at realizing a conversation isn't going anywhere and stopping responding.
I rarely ever do get into the discussion because generally it's just frustrating and pointless. But I've been studying maths all day and needed a change.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, to be honest, it's I'd rather get into a discussion about something like the burden of proof, but again, that's another one that with the average internet atheist goes over their head because they've had it programmed into them. No, it's only on someone making a claim. And you go, okay, but what about a theist that only believes it? They're not actually making a claim it's true. They're just saying that they believe it's true. So they're not making a positive claim. No, a belief is a claim. And you go through that thing. Okay, a belief is a claim about your internal state, that you do make a minor external claim if you think that that's true, but you're not saying it is definitely true. You're not making that truth claim. So it's a bit different. And when you're saying, you lack belief because there isn't enough evidence, again, that's still a bit of a claim on both sides, because, well, what do you think the evidence should be? How do you know it's not evidence? Not evidence is one of the things that frustrates me, because there is a lot of evidence for various gods. It's just not particularly strong or convincing, or at least I don't find it convincing. Theists obviously do. I think it's incredibly weak, unconvincing. So many different claims contradict each other and things like that. So, but I do try and have more conversations. I prefer to have a conversation about something like morality. But again, I've entered the same thing. So I was having a chat with someone the other day who was a subjectivist, though through discussion, I said, okay, it sounds like you're more of an emotivist, which is a form of subjectivism in a way, but it wasn't, full on moral subjectivism as it's understood. And we'd talk about things, but then he would contradict himself, but not realize he would. It's like, no, you can do that. I was like, you can do that, but that sort of invalidates what you've said before. And again, you end up going round in this circle of someone who is so fixed in their position that they don't really, want to change. They don't want to understand where you're coming from, and it can be very difficult. And as you mentioned earlier, like, this conversation is actually going really well. It's going a lot better online. Now, that was actually a DM conversation, so it was private. There wasn't even any dogpiling going on. But he then gave a definition for, what was good or what was moral. And I said, okay, so if this is what is defined as moral, someone doing X is moral then. And it was just silence because it was something that really wasn't moral.
Yeah.
But that seems to be the way. I mean, that's one of the troubles with an internet conversation, because people can just completely shut down. There is that wall there. And if they decide that I can't continue this conversation because, I don't know enough, they'll do that. And then they'll carry on saying the same crap. You're like,
yeah.
Oh.
Well, Well, I think something like Twitter and Facebook, people aren't putting these ideas out to be challenged. They're not putting the ideas out to be questioned or to have a discussion about them. They're shouting in the void to see who agrees with them and pats them on the back for thinking that way.
Yeah, like the example you brought up earlier, I didn't expect anyone to suggest a theist in a coma.
Yeah.
So you've seen why your definition doesn't work then. Well, it does work, but I'm just going to caveat it and change it. And
Basically, most people have never met a philosopher. And most people probably shouldn't, because, they're bad for people's health, especially mental health.
Or if everybody met a philosopher and thought like a philosopher, then actually everyone's mental health could be really good because they'd have thoroughly thought things through before doing anything. Although they may all end up like Chidi. So,
Yeah, I haven't quite reached that stage yet, so I'm definitely not a philosopher yet. Okay, so the conversation then carries on, and Meno tries to change the subject, and he brings up what's known as the paradox of inquiry, which is basically you can inquire about something, but if you already know about it, you don't need to inquire about it. And if you don't know about it, how will you ever know when you found it?
You just know, man.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically the paradox. As Meno puts it, out of the range of the things that you don't know, which of them will you put before yourself to be the objective of your search? In the best case, you do stumble upon your objective. How will you know that it is your objective, given that you know about it? So basically, if you don't know what you're looking for, how will you know when you found it?
Mm. Yeah, but I mean, even in that sort of sense, it's when you're analysing something and you're thinking about something, whether it's evidence or arguments or anything like that, you get to a point where you have that justification that ticks all the boxes, don't you? So you may not ultimately know if it's the truth, but you know that a particular position is the most well thought through and relatable one based on all the evidence and arguments that you've examined. So you reach that. It's like a funnel, isn't it? You start off with this could be anything, and bit by bit over time the funnel gets thinner and thinner and thinner till you get down to that tiny little bit, at which point there's only one, maybe two things that it could be.
Yeah, exactly. Think of the what's in the box argument. One of the faults with this, of course, as well, is to know something isn't to know everything about it. Mm-hmm. Like you now know about the Meno and some basic facts about the Meno. And you can then use that to springboard on to learn more about it. Learn books, people have written books about it. Learn to get deeper into it. You've learned that you can go out and buy dialogues of Plato, read them, learn what it says. So knowing something or knowing about something isn't knowing the whole of something.
Yeah.
So you might only have the basic bit of information, and that can lead to greater discoveries.
Yeah.
Which is what Socrates was kind of trying to show. Socrates is saying, I don't know anything about virtue, but as you can see through the dialogue, he's like, well, virtue isn't doing this, it's behaving in a particular way. So he's showing that he does know a little bit, but he's not saying he knows everything. So he does have a starting point that they both can work from. And a starting point that Meno agrees with, even though he doesn't actually realize that he's agreeing with it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's like we were saying about the dialectical conversations. You might actually know a hell of a lot about a topic that you're discussing with your partner, but the point is to go on this search together. And things might come up that you don't know yourself. You don't have to, as you said, you don't have to know everything about a topic. And there can be times you go, oh, let's put a pin in that one. I'll research that one and come back to you. But let's discuss this bit for now.
Exactly. And so Socrates has, by allowing Meno to come up with this, well, what about so-and-so? Meno has attempted to change the thing because he's in that aphoretic state and he's lashing out. But Socrates has allowed him to just get over that state a little, lash out a little bit, and then say, well, look, your argument's not particularly good, and this is why. And he then goes through a whole bunch of other stuff. So what Plato is showing here is when they have reached that point, let them lash out that little bit. Don't get, as with the stingray thing, he's saying, well, I'm not going to get involved in this slanging match. Why, instead of yelling at each other and insulting each other, why don't we instead put our heads together? Let's search for it. Let's have a dialectical conversation. And then, of course, Meno tries to lash out and says, well, what's the point of having a dialect? Neither of us knows anything about it. And if none of us know anything about it, then how are we ever going to know anything about it? And he just kind of goes, yeah, okay, well, we can start from a starting point and work from there. He goes through, there's a bit now where he argues that souls are immortal and gain knowledge through reincarnation. Everything they learned in a previous life, they can still recollect in a current life. So learning and discovery isn't about finding new stuff. It's about trying to recall what you've already learned. Now, the interesting thing about this, and this is something you'll only learn if you look at the works of like Dominic Scott or Rosalind Weiss, or somebody who knows the history of Socrates, is that Socrates didn't actually believe in reincarnation. He didn't believe learning was simply recollection. He actually believed learning was investigative and, dialectical, and you search for things and you find truths and you learn them.
Mm-hmm.
But because Meno is that sort of, I have slightly higher knowledge than most people, he then uses this idea that Meno believes and then works from there. So he diffuses the situation by using terms and ideas that, even though Socrates doesn't agree with them, he can get Meno interested in the conversation again.
Like I've seen you do before, where you find out how someone wants to use a word or discuss things. Like the conversation you had with Chris on the morality debate, which, I found frustrating for the definition of morality and ethics used. But you did very well at trying to discuss things on his terms and explore the idea further. You had a starting point and you worked from there. And it was interesting. I almost wish that conversation we had set the parameters of the definitions of what we were discussing first, because I think we would have had a better conversation about morality. But the way you dealt with it in this sort of manner, it showed that progression of the ideas and things building on, and you did somewhat change Chris's mind, not completely, but he finally got an understanding of, how how morality is discussed within philosophy, even coming from a point where he had a very different understanding of morality and ethics in the first place. So yeah, definitely great way to do it. Basically be on their side, and all this stuff that's not necessarily relevant to the conversation or is partially relevant to the conversation, it's not so important. Let's go with that. I'm happy to go with that. Now let's talk about the meat of the topic.
Yeah, exactly. In order to have a good dialectical discussion, they're going to need to be interested in it anyway. And if you keep putting them on guard and you keep putting them in the aphoretic state, which we saw earlier, they're just going to walk away in frustration, like Meno tried to do with the whole, well, I've insulted you, why aren't you insulting me back? And then, well, what's the point in looking for it if neither of us knows what it is, neither of us can ever find out what it is? And then he draws him back in with the recollection thing. Like you say, he draws him back in by, well, let's go with this stuff I might not necessarily believe, but then we can get into the real meat, which is what happens after this. We're definitely not got enough time, and we don't necessarily need to go into that because we've just seen how to start the conversation, how it will generally reach that temper tantrum stage, and how to kind of bring it back. Which is the main point of what this looking at the Meno was.
Yeah, no, definitely. It was looking at the Meno, it was basically the end point of our discussion about discussions, because we are moving forward into other topics. As much as we like discussions and all that sort of thing, and we are trying to encourage better discussions online and try and sway people away from being too heuristic and try and have dialectic conversations. There are only so many times we can have the same sort of stream go on, you know. And I mean, it was really nice having that a bit of change of pace last Thursday, where we went into a bit of aesthetics and things like that. We still actually need to have a chat tonight about what we're going to do this Thursday. We're a little bit behind in our planning, so hopefully tonight we'll have decided Thursday and Tuesday.
That's my fault. I'm sorry, folks. I've been so caught up in the new degree starting that I've lost track of everything.
Actually, this week was going to be an odd one as well, wasn't it? Because of your schedule, I think you've actually got something on the Thursday, so we might not be
doing tomorrow.
Yeah, so we're doing tomorrow instead of Thursday. So we're definitely going to have to plan that one in, and then probably next Tuesday will be fine. But yes, we'll sort that out. So, Dave, in regards to the Meno, is there much more from any of the rest of it that can add to what we've done, or is it just showing how they finally come to an accord on, what virtue is?
They never quite come to an accord of what virtue is. The conversation ends with Socrates saying, well, we don't actually know whether virtue is teachable or not. And a lot of Plato's dialogue sort of end open-ended, because it's not about telling you. It's not about being like Gorgias. It's about teaching you how to think and how to approach problems and how to work through and have more solid beliefs.
Which I think is great, and I think it's something we all need to think about more, especially a lot of foundational beliefs that we have from when we're children that we've learned, we believe because mum and dad said, and all that sort of thing. And there are so many times, especially in the last 3 or 4 years, I think, where I've been a little bit more aware of what I think and what I say. And I have always been someone, at least in my adult life, that and probably teenage life, that spent a lot of time looking into a topic that I know about, but or at least I would claim to know about, should I say. But there are some times where I will repeat something that I realise I learned as a child, and I go, hang on, don't quote me on that. I haven't actually investigated this one myself. I learnt this as a child, so it's probably wrong. Because I have found, most of the stuff I've learnt as a child really was wrong. And to be honest, a lot of the stuff I learnt as a teenager and in my 20s was probably wrong too.
I can absolutely relate. The only thing I know that I learned that's accurate is let X be X. Oh, and 10 print Dave is awesome, 20 go to 10.
Sorry, what?
10 print Dave is awesome, 20 go to 10.
I don't know what that means, Dave. I'm sorry.
You've never programmed in BASIC?
Only Q Basic.
Oh. Okay, well that's general BASIC.
Fair.
10 print Dave is awesome, 20 go to 10. So it just keeps
going, looping back round and round and round and round and round. Yeah, but yeah,
you youngsters.
Well, no, Q Basic was a bit similar, actually.
But Q Basic could do it without line numbers, and you could have functions and procedures and things like that.
Exactly. Yeah, I've never done Basic.
I'll just go.
You're going to get a shock when you start programming again.
Well, I can program in C++ and Pascal and Modular 2 and Basic
So
and a few other
why
things.
have you left me to do the site, Dave? Bastard.
Because I don't know any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, so they never reach an accord on it. So is there anything left to learn about this? Is it they never reach an accord, but they reach one in a vague way that is positive versus, well, fuck it, we'll agree to disagree then.
Yeah, they reach a conclusion where they could both say, well, we have a kind of foundation now for what virtue is, and we can go off and we can learn more about it, discuss more about it, come to better conclusions. We have a reasonable starting point.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, that's it. It's sometimes that's all you can ask for, because you saw how Meno was. I am the smartest person in any room at all times. He's got him to realize that he's not the smartest person in every room at all times. And he's got him to actually agree that maybe he should do a bit more thinking about the topic. And sometimes that's probably the best you can ask for.
Yeah, I agree on that one. I think we all need to think a little bit more and a little bit better than we do.
I mean, we could always do a full breakdown of the Meno at some point. It's a lot of my dissertation involved it, so.
Yeah, well, I mean, that wasn't the point. I know we were discussing the Meno over 2 streams, but the whole point wasn't to go through the whole Meno. It was just to tie off our conversations about heuristic and dialectic, and whether you're being monological or dialogical and all that sort of thing. Hopefully, through watching these streams, you've at least somewhat realized that there is a better way to approach conversations. I know that for a lot of our viewers, whether they're on the live stream or they're the ones that watch afterwards, we're pretty much preaching to the choir, because the reason that they're here with us is because they have engaged with us in this way, where even if we don't necessarily agree with each other, we've had a good conversation, and we've had a pleasant agree to disagree versus a violent disagreement, so hopefully there are a couple of people who pick up on this and think about the way they're approaching their conversations and everything like that, and they can actually go, okay, yeah, perhaps in the future, maybe when I sit down and have a conversation, I will take the position that even though I'm very confident in this topic, I might not know everything about it. And when I'm having a discussion with a partner, I'm not going to defend a position. I'm not going to attack their position. What I'm going to do is ask them what they know about it, and then ask them questions about it. And, as calmly as I can, go, well, can you explain this bit to me? But doesn't this bit seem to contradict that bit? I don't understand. And just have a proper, decent conversation. Search for that truth. And be aware that actually you might not know everything you thought you know. And your opinion might change on it. Or the pair of you might go, fuck, neither of us know enough about this conversation or this topic to actually continue. We should both look into it more and continue this conversation another day. And that's perfectly fine. I think there's something very virtuous about being able to admit that you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you've sort of hit the nail on the head with, if you go into every conversation thinking that you know everything, or, you can't be wrong about a certain thing, then you're never leaving yourself open to learn anything. You always assume that you're there to teach the other person. And there's a popular saying in the atheist community that I'm never certain of anything. I don't have any absolute certainties. But yet they mostly enter most conversations absolutely certain that they're the ones that know what they're talking about.
That's very true, especially when it comes down to the conversations that keep popping up of definition of atheism and subjective morality and all that sort of thing. And you're just like, and again, when someone is 100% certain like that, it is like talking to a brick wall. It's really hard to break that person down. And I don't mean break them down in the sense that you're trying to make them wilt and be that, but I mean break down the wall that's surrounding them so that you can actually have that decent conversation with them. As Leon says, she doesn't like debating. I prefer discussions where we exchange info and opinions more than anything. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, my type of discussion.
Definitely. There's nothing wrong with putting in our own opinion and beliefs and things like that into the conversation. Of course, I mean, well, I think it's like this, but you know, I'm still looking for more information. Maybe you can show me where this is wrong. You know, you phrase it that way. You're having a conversation. Show me where I'm wrong. That's a great way to get someone at least more interested in the conversation. I find if you go, look, this is my current position. I'm not too firm in this position. Sorry, Leon. I do apologize. Nice to meet you, dude.
Are you misgendering people?
I am. I do apologize. I'm yeah. They. I'm going to just call everyone they. I'm just going to call everyone they. Yeah. I have been really good at doing it recently on stream. I've been very conscious with doing it, and something in my brain is, you know, I must admit though, you've got very pretty eyes and eye makeup, so it's probably what led me down that path. Yeah. But yeah, so as I was saying, there's nothing wrong with putting something into yourself and asking someone, well, show me where I'm wrong, because we're of a different position, to show me why you think I'm wrong. And if they start down that path of, well, I'm just not convinced by it, you're like, okay, but what isn't convincing you? What is making you think that this position is wrong? Because if you're convinced that this position is wrong, then help me be convinced that this position is wrong. Just don't think it's strong. And that's one of the times when you go, okay, well, I'm looking to have a conversation. You're saying that I'm wrong, but you're not able to explain why I'm wrong. So how do you know I'm wrong?
This is why discussions about epistemic responsibility and epistemic justification are important.
They really are, and I wish more people would take the time to actually understand them. And I'm not saying that you have to be perfect and that your justifications have to be absolutely amazing and out of this world and Nobel Prize winning. We're all just humans at the end of the day. Yeah. But you just need to look into things and be able to give a half-decent justification for your position, whatever it is. Even if it's a lack belief position, you know, well, why do you lack belief? I'm not convinced. Okay, so what about this information isn't convincing? Not evidence. Well, it is evidence because evidence is indicative. So even if you don't find it strong or convincing, what about it do you find unconvincing? You know, start small, build up. It can be really hard though, because as we've discussed many times, is that people are more into a fight than actually having a discussion.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I understand the mentality as well. I've been there. You know, especially when I first got into the online debate world. And I suppose there almost is a bit of a rush at that smackdown comment where you've completely thwarted someone else's argument. But it hasn't actually got anyone anywhere. All you've got is you feel good, I guess. So you do feel good for winning. And you might have your peers patting you on the back, but you haven't actually made an effective change. And in some respects, you've probably pushed the person that you're having the dialogue with further into their own position by the way you've conducted yourself. And people who might have been watching it, that might have been on the fence, from the way you've conducted yourself, might have actually sided with the other person and gone that way, just because you've been a bit of a dick or a bit too arrogant in the way that you've presented yourself. You know, what you thought was a smackdown has actually turned into something where you've made people feel rejected. And like we were discussing in the article of the psychology of rejection, when people feel rejected, it tends to reaffirm their position. They sink back into their in-group, and they have that reaffirmed there, and they all talk about how, oh, well, I don't want to be that type of person. That type of person, they're all dickheads. So I have demonstrated the negative behaviours that I have spent a lot of time trying to convince others not to do. I'm not telling you that I am better than you in any way, shape, or form. What I can tell you is I have fucked up a lot, and I want to help people realise where they're fucking up to. And I want people to help me realise where I'm fucking up. He's brilliant at that.
That's why I studied,
And that's why we do the stream, so I can continue to be pointed out where I'm fucking up.
I need to be pointed out on occasion as well. So.
Yeah.
Going back to the whole, you don't have to know everything. I've got that degree, and I still need to look stuff up. So, there's nothing bad in saying, well, okay, I might know this bit, but you'll have to give me a bit of time. I need to go off and learn this bit. Or if somebody says something that you're pretty certain you know of, but they've said something different, and you think, well, they seem to know what they're talking about. I have good reason to think they might know what they're talking about. Maybe I should go up and look this up and then come back to the conversation.
Yeah, definitely. I think, though, it's one of the things that is harder. When you get over that Dunning-Kruger slip and you realise, oh shit, there's so much more that I don't know, you almost do end up in that imposter syndrome where you're constantly questioning everything you know, and you're so much less confident than these people who are where you used to be. And with their absolute confidence in something, it makes you question yourself, like, oh crap, am I really wrong about this? I mean, I know I've been looking into this, and I used to have the same position as them, but they're really confident in what they're saying. So maybe I'm the one that's wrong. I'm going to have to go off and look at all this information, all the while they're ringing the bell of victory, and you're like, oh shit. Do I know as much about morality as I thought I did? Oh, maybe I don't. I'm going to have to reread everything I've read again.
Or I'm going to have to go ask Dave.
Yeah, well, that's generally the way it is. But not everyone has a Dave, and sometimes you're unavailable too, so I have to read for myself.
If you pay me Patreon money, I'll be available to anybody.
We do have a Patreon on that manner.
That's why I thought I'd mention it.
Patreon/Answers in Reason. Yes.
Have access to our private WhatsApp group, and you can ask me all the questions to your heart's content.
Indeed. That is one of the benefits. So when you sign up to Patreon, the first level is just a small support thing. You get access to the Discord channel. If you haven't joined already, we do occasionally send out free invites and stuff like that, but we're trying to keep the Discord channel quite small at the moment because we've got lots of stuff we're trying to look at. But when you go up from there, you can join us on WhatsApp. So as long as you provide us your number, we'll add you to a WhatsApp group, which will be with Dave, myself, and Martine, to have any conversation or anything like that. You obviously get early access to articles and podcasts and exclusive, depending on which package that you decide to get. And obviously it helps us out with our server costs and stuff like that. Of course, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. Pretty much everything does come for free eventually. You're free to contact us on any form of social media at Answers in Reason. So Facebook and pretty much everywhere. If you look for Answers in Reason, you can have a conversation. On Twitter, Dave is at TrolleyDave1971. So if you want to give him a follow as well. But if you forget that, look for Answers in Reason. I can always add us to a group chat. So if you ever want to have a discussion there, but please be aware that unless it's WhatsApp, it might be a slower turnaround time. WhatsApp is where you'll generally get a quick turnaround from.
Yeah, I mean, Joe works during the day and I study during the day, so we can be a bit slow during the day sometimes.
Yeah, it depends on what I'm working on, though. Sometimes I'm working on something where I've built a query and I have to wait 5 minutes for the query to run, and I can sometimes get onto it and go, yep, okay, here's this. Right, I need to get back to you later, but But yeah, in general, you will have to wait till our evening time. But if you're anywhere in the world, generally people who watch us seem to be in the States anyway. That's probably your midday, so that might work out for you.
Yeah.
And obviously, just you can always go on to answersinreason.com or answers-in-reason.com, and on any of the articles there, you can leave a comment, or you can leave a message on our speak pipe. It's an audio message, so we can always play that out on one of the streams and answer any of your questions. And yeah, if you're on YouTube, I suppose I should say please like and subscribe, because apparently people can't do that for themselves. But honestly, even that helps us in itself. We are trying to build a bit of a following so that we can do this sort of stuff more regularly for you. I'd love to be able to stream every night of the week, but it is a bit of a time and money issue for us. So yeah, if you can help us reach that goal, that would be amazing.
Yeah. And we'd be eternally grateful.
We will. And we actually will be. We already admit to you that we're a pair of dickheads. So
Yeah.
you know that's true. We're just honest dickheads.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad that we've sort of come to the end of our discussions on discussions. It's been really interesting finding out a little bit more about a topic that I definitely knew enough of the surface level. I think I probably knew more than a lot of the people I'm talking to online know. But going through that, I reckon there's still a hell of a lot I don't know about the topic. And we've had, like 5 or 6 streams around this sort of thing recently. And again, it shows that the more you know about a topic, the more you start thinking, crap, there's probably a hell of a lot more that I don't know about this topic. And it's a good one to look into. But the main thing I think all of us should take away from looking into this topic is just considering what we're trying to achieve with our discussions online, and the best way to actually achieve it. And I don't think that the people who like to have fights and ridicule others and insult others and make fun of people are doing anything to further any goal other than an ego boost. And if you genuinely are looking to convince other people of your position, whether it's the person you're talking with or with an onlooker, consider your approach and consider how you feel when you're in a conversation and someone is acting all holier than thou, aggressive, eristic, argumentative, and how that makes you feel, and if that convinces you. Or when you're an onlooker to a conversation where person A is making fun of person B, does that endear you to person A, especially if it's a position you disagree with? I mean, the one I bring up quite often is when you think about how a lot of new vegans tend to be really holier thou and judgmental to people. Now, most vegans are generally really chill people, and it's your choice. I think you should do this for moral reasons, blah blah blah. But they'll have the conversation with you if you're willing to have it. They won't be all up in your face about it. But the ones you see are the ones that really constantly get up in your face and being judgmental and telling you you're an evil person, killing animals, or they'll say you're murdering animals, and you can get into a whole conversation about the definition of murder and how that doesn't fit, but that's not there. And you find that you're being pushed away from them, even if the message that they're saying might be the right thing and the way you should actually be going. What they're saying is pushing you away from them, and you're just like, that's what's happening when you're being that online, whether it's a theist or an atheist or anyone holding a particular position. When you get really polemic and eristic and argumentative and insulting, you don't really do anything other than flatter your own ego. And
Get pats on the back.
Yeah, exactly. And is that really good for anything? I'd argue not.
No. Especially not if you're trying to change something.
No. As you say, Dave, when changing your mind, respect matters. That's
Yeah.
on answersinreason.com. Well, awesome. I think that might actually be us done for the night, mightn't it?
Yeah.
Well, that's just a shame because I've been enjoying the conversation so much. I wanted it to continue going on. But,
I have.
I guess that's it. We're
I'm
done.
sorry. I am knackered.
Yeah, that's fair. You've had a tutorial today. You don't have one tomorrow. So this week, as I was mentioning, the tutorial will be tomorrow.
Stream.
Yes, sorry. See, I'm losing it. So the stream will be tomorrow, and we will be discussing something that you'll find out if you are following us somewhere on social media, because that's when we will have decided on it, because we haven't yet. We're unorganized this week. I do apologize, but these things happen. Life gets away from us, as I'm sure it does you sometimes. And next week, well, I don't know what the schedule's like. We'll let you know, though. We're going to try and get some time quickly after this or tomorrow in the day to book things in. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, you've been watching the Fresh Air Sci-Fi Show. We've been part 2 of Don't Be So Meno to Me, and we've finished our discussions on discussions, at least for now. As we always say, if anyone does want us to go deeper into any topic, then we are happy to. We just want to explore these things, and some of these concepts are so incredibly deep and complex that for a 2-hour stream, we can only give you a surface level. But what we want to do is give you more when you tell us, right, you've covered this, but I think there's more to it. Yes, Leon, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Leon.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be a fantastic substitute. Although you're already converted. We need to convert LB. Right. Well, thank you everybody who's watching live now, and thank you for everyone who watches in the future as well. You've been listening to the Fresh Air Sci-Fi Show. I'm Joe.
And I'm Socrates Light.
Good night, all.
Good night. Take care, Leon. Have a good day.
So, as we mentioned, the usual schedule will be on Tuesday and Thursday, 8 p.m. GMT. But at this point in time, we are going through a bit of a change. Our next stream is probably going to be tomorrow around 8:30 p.m. GMT. That's sort of 3:30 p.m. Eastern American time.